I'm a catechist. I'm the director of religious education at St. Augustine Church in Des Moines, but I am a parishioner here at St. Francis. And at least 15 years ago, I started learning about a method of catechesis called the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And it's an approach that uses the findings of Maria Montessori. Are any of you familiar with Maria Montessori? She did a lot of research a long time ago. She was born in 1907, and she was experimenting with the way children learn. And what she discovered was that children learn naturally. When they're very young, they absorb. So all these things we know now about little children. Maria Montessori was the one that observed that children at a certain age just absorb their environment, the language, right, and everything. And that and people that learned from her discovered also that children also absorb their faith experientially. And so this approach to catechesis really started in the 1950s in Italy, and it came to the United States in the 1970s, and now it's all over the world. And it's a beautiful approach to catechesis for children, but it's also a beautiful approach for adults. So I'm going to do one of the presentations with you that we do with the little children. It's going to be modified for you, though, a little bit. If you were in what we call the atrium, the classroom for the little children, as an untrained adult, you would probably want to strangle somebody, because it's soft and quiet and slow, and it's very meditative. It's very prayerful to be in the room. And when we do a presentation, we use as few words as possible. We want the children to have an ability to see materials and to hear a simple truth, and then for them to hear the Holy Spirit tell them what the Holy Spirit's going to tell them, because we believe very deeply that the Holy Spirit is already there for the child. We just have to introduce them, God and the child. They're both mysterious creatures. Children are only children very briefly. We're not children anymore. We can't be children anymore. That time was very brief in our lives. And if we can get that relationship aspect of our faith very young, then it will never leave. But when we are introduced to God, when we are of reasoning mind, when we're 5 or 6 or older, then that ability to absorb God is gone. Now we have to learn about Him through our brains and our reasoning instead of through our hearts, directly into our hearts. So it obviously still happens, but it's much more difficult. So while the children are young and really prone to falling in love, we want to introduce them to God. So this particular presentation was the presentation that really helped me fall in love with God myself as an adult. So there is a moment at Mass when the priest prepares the chalice, and the way he prepares it looks like this. What did you see? How much wine went into the chalice?
All of it.
All of it. How much water? A drop. 1 drop. As close to a drop as I could make it. If the wine represents God and the water represents us, how much wine? So much wine. So much wine. How much us? What does that say about how great, how big God is? And you don't have to answer all these questions. They're hypothetical too. They're to contemplate. So little water. one year I had a boy say, all of us in that little drop of water. God must be enormous. Can we pull the water out again? And this is the wine that becomes Jesus at Mass. What does that say about who Jesus is? There's a prayer that the priest will say when he's doing this gesture. It's a private prayer that he says. He says, by the mystery of this water and wine, may we come to share in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. By the mystery of this water and wine, may we come to share in the divinity of Christ. What is divinity? You ever think about what that word means?
It's holy, right?
Mm-hmm. Divine. To be divine is to be godly, right? And Christ is divine. Jesus is divine. We come to share in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. You know what humbled means? The word humble means low to the ground. Who's low to the ground? Are we low to the ground? We're the lowest of the low. Babies. Right? They're low to the ground. By the mystery of this water and wine, may we come to share in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. Was Jesus God? Was Jesus man? What might we say to Jesus about this mystery? You have questions on your sheets at your tables. For the remainder of our prayer time, perhaps you would like to contemplate these questions. And you can write answers or pray answers or talk to God about these mysteries.